It announces it now. Okay, what's your question?
Sir, is having a higher level of intelligence considered to also have a higher level of consciousness? I think, you look at the human race. I mean, this whole world seems like it's falling apart. I mean, but you always hear that, human beings have the highest level of consciousness or intelligence. I don't think that's true in a lot of cases.
Yeah, I'm going to say no. It's not simply intelligence. Because what's your definition of intelligence? Why do I have... Huh. What's your definition of intelligence? When you say, you're comparing intelligence with consciousness, like, how do you see it? I want to hear.
Well, intelligence is not just about being book smart.
Right.
It's recognizing how to live your life smartly.
No, that's still intelligence. So a lot of people think, like sometimes I catch a video and someone will be very almost arrogant about their IQ. And okay, so maybe you're a problem solver, but consciousness is going to be more aware of your biases, your influences. Are you able to take the middle ground and hear both sides without judgment and then use your intelligence to evaluate? Because I have certainly come across, and I'm sure you guys have as well, very smart people who have no idea how biased they are, have no idea what's running their belief system. They're just as influenced by propaganda as the next person, and they really have no idea that they are. So, in my opinion, in my observation, I've seen some remarkable mind control these days. And for me, my perspective, which is all I can give you, it's very obvious. So you can be in a conversation with somebody and you can see how strong and how firm their biases are and how strong and firm they're influenced by wherever they're getting their information from. It's usually fairly obvious because there is no question what runs the mainstream news, the mainstream media, even movies and television shows, so Hollywood, it's all influenced by mega dollars. And they want, if I had a company and somebody famous was speaking well about it, my company will do very well. If they're speaking badly about it, then my company can do very poorly. So how about paying that famous person, millions of dollars so that they speak well about me? And now just multiply that by, well, what are the most popular shows? Because we can go beyond advertising. We can pay for advertising and we can sell our product with advertising, right? But we can also spend so much on advertising that then we have a conversation with those who decide on the content of whatever shows are on TV or whatever the news is reporting and what they're allowed to say and not allowed to say. And so if the bottom line of the let's say a channel, whatever network, if the bottom line is so relying on my dollars, well, I'm sure as heck going to have a say in what they're allowed to say and what they're not allowed to say, because if they say something that I don't like, I pull my advertising. And what if your advertising is 40, 50, 60, 70% of their revenue? Well, they're going to listen to you and you're going to have some serious influence. And so now if that's happening behind the scenes and the person who's very smart is completely unaware of that, but they believe what they're watching is real and true and honest, and then they like the people that they're watching, so they develop a trust. It's no different than okay, so I'm Shifu, right? Do you know how many Shifus or senseis or martial arts teachers, or we can even go into coaches, and of course people know about the priests, the clergy. And there can be a lot of advantage taken with people you trust. Obviously, many children have some pretty bad experiences with all those kind of things. You put yourself in a place of trust, a place of power. You can have influence over children. You can have influence over other adults. And you can virtually run their lives by controlling what they believe and what they think. You can ruin their lives by just taking whatever you think you want, what you think you need, because you're most important, right? So the position, for me personally, using the term Shifu is no different than being my children's father. I should be the best person they know, the best example they know. And I take that very seriously. So when I hear about, and in my mind, what keeps coming up is like sexual abuse. So when you see children who have stories of things that happen in their families, see, this is a lack of consciousness. Somebody could be very smart, could be a lawyer, could be whatever. They win cases and everything, and yet they're home and they're abusing their child. So how do you do that? And so consciousness is also an awareness of our connections to each other and how we influence each other and how we can control others depending on our dominance, charisma, influence, how we are. Some people are very influential, right? Very charismatic, and you can pretty much get people to do whatever you want them to do. Many years ago, part-time, when I was first teaching like an assistant, I had some sales jobs, and I never looked at myself as a salesperson. But you think about, you go to the office where all the salespeople are, and some people do phenomenally and other people do terribly. Well, why is that? Same product, same hours out there every day, but some people are far more influential. They know how to convince people of what they want. And you can convince someone against their own will, basically. It's like talk them into buying something they don't even need. And it's an amazing thing how a great salesperson can work anywhere and make almost any amount that they want to make, because they're just great at it. They're sort of that people person. And now think about that influence and turn it into what is being presented through news, television shows, talk shows, movies, so many different places. The papers that you read, the articles. An intelligent person a lot of times can read very fast, and they're also, if they're successful, they're pretty busy. So even an intelligent person might just be reading headlines. And if you're really paying attention, you realize many times the headline is very different than if you read deep into the article. Because you can learn about the language of influence, and you can learn about the language of manipulation. And you can see how something is written with liabilities in mind. Just for example, I could say acupuncture works. Acupuncture will cure your back pain, let's say. I can say that in an ad. No, I can't. Because there's rules. I can't say acupuncture will work for you. We don't know that for sure. So maybe I have to say acupuncture can cure your back pain. Can it? Can you really say can? And then cure is a problem. You see that? So then you have to turn it into may help you. So there's this question mark. This may help you. Try this. And so you see, you go from a definitive statement to something that's more like manipulative. And so the person who knows what they're saying is wrong can word it in a way that they can say, well, I didn't say that was definite. I just said, maybe this is a good idea. You can try, but I don't even think it's true. But you don't know that because you're just reading the lines like, oh, this may help. Okay. And you go spend your money, spend your time. And that's just an example, any drug, so many things that we see. And so what is a smart person? What is an intelligent person? In my opinion, well, another habit I've had, and you think about this. If I want to know about something, I was known to get like a bookshelf of that topic from every angle because I want to read and digest the perspectives of each. And then I sit on it and I figure out, and honestly, because of Bagua, because of the way I learn, natural laws became my litmus test. And so to really answer a question like how truthful this is, whatever the subject is or whatever the article's saying, I can come back to, does this make sense in nature? I'm realizing I'm getting a lot of feedback. Oh, I still am. Why am I? Okay. So now you're getting all these perspectives, and you may even get a very highly regarded information source, and you start to realize that they may be lying. They may be coming from a place of authority that they got the authority through, let's just say, the wrong channels, the wrong approach, the wrong reason. Many times it's money. And so things will be spoken about, written about, that don't make sense in nature. So here's something that just came to mind. A friend of mine here, it's actually a father of a friend of my daughter's. And my daughter twisted her ankle. And his wife is a nurse. And the common treatment, and this is what I'm going to say, is actually one of those things where there's a liability there. But way back in the 80s, or when I was a child, I used to sprain my ankle a lot coming up with sports and things. And every time we would ice it and, rice, rest, ice, compression, elevation. This is your first aid to a sprain, for example. And I would sprain it again. My ankles were always a problem. And then eventually, through the martial arts, one of my teachers said not to ice. And then I got to college and I met a ex-Olympic gymnastics coach. And he said not to ice. And putting that all together and trusting, because the natural principle there is circulation heals. What's one of the first things we do when a joint swells up after we injure it? We want to get rid of the swelling. Well, where the heck did that come from? Who made that up? You couldn't be any more wrong. The swelling is how your body brings all the repair materials. That's the circulation coming into the area so we can remove damaged tissue and reinforce and build up with new tissue. It can heal it. Swelling is necessary. So it's completely contradictory to natural laws. But of course, coming up, I always believed that, well, you don't think about it. The doctor says, do this, you do it. And so that was one of those early experiences where once I started going the other way, if I sprain my ankle, I would heal it much faster and much better. And eventually the ankles never gave me problems anymore. In fact, I was at the dojo once in the basement carrying boxes, and I sprained it worse than ever. I mean, I think if it wasn't for the Bagua practice, being the body's much more supple and strong, it would have broken something, because I came down with weight in my hands on a half step on my toe, and it just turned right over. And I'm down there basically silent screaming and doing what I learned, which is, well, let's put it this way. If a joint gets twisted this way, it's going to pull back and tighten it up the other way. It's going to pull itself into place, and everything's going to get very tight, which is why I kept spraining my ankle more and more over time, because everything's tighter, you twist it less, and it's already sprained. So what I learned to do was, as it pulls up this way, now I start stretching it apart. I start pulling it apart. Now, let me tell you something. That's very painful. You have to have pain tolerance, but the natural human reaction is to avoid pain. And that's why you don't touch it. You put it up in elevation, you put ice on it, and you leave it alone, because we hate pain. But if you can handle the pain and you can stretch it out, what happens is it's going to heal very quickly. You're going to increase blood flow. You move it gently, the blood flow continues instead of getting trapped in there. Swelling will come in and it will clear naturally, because your circulation will take it back out. Swelling gets stuck when you have poor circulation. Like people get a knee drained, right? They get a needle and suck it. Well, that doesn't make any sense, because you're pulling out water and then the body will put more water. So it's like an ongoing cycle, never ending. What you want to do is increase circulation to the area so the body clears it properly. And so what I found out, even with a bad ankle sprain, I was able to function fully and heal better and not have a problem later. Whereas before, my problem was coming easier and easier and easier and easier. So that's something that completely contradicts the mainstream that intelligent people think are right. Intelligent people, very smart people, very highly trained people. And I will tell from my experience, they're wrong. And this is an example where martial arts have had injuries for thousands of years. People figured out how to heal the body. And then more recently, a few years ago, well, first, probably 20 years ago, I came across a book written by doctors that said never ice a sprained ankle. So I have that book. And then a couple of years ago, there's a book came out called Iced. I'm pretty sure that was the title. And I read that book, and it was, again, telling, well, it started with where is the history of that idea to ice it? And I found that so interesting. Apparently it was in the 60s. There was a gentleman on a train who was, I don't know, maybe hanging out the window or something, and a signpost took his arm off. And they stopped the train and they grabbed his arm and they brought him to the ER, to the hospital. And the first thing the doctor said was, put that on ice. So then eventually they repaired it, and they were able to put it back on. And that recording of that treatment got passed down. And instead of, this is a severed limb. And what they started to do was ice all these injuries. He tracked it back to that. It's like so interesting how we don't know things that we so fully believe is true. We don't know where it came from and if it's actually true. I'll tell you another interesting story. If you've ever been with a woman giving birth, if you go to the hospital, they put her on her back and they put her legs in stirrups, and it's like the doctor plays catch, right? You know where that originated? If I remember correctly, it was with the King of England. The king wanted to see the baby born. And so they put him on display. They put the woman on display so the king could watch the birth. So putting the legs up in stirrups is about the dumbest way to deliver a baby. The woman needs to be able to squat, needs to be able to move in positions that are comfortable for her. And just like in our Bagua, we know how to expand the dantian by squatting down. You're going to help. It helps with the bathroom. If you can squat, there's even a thing now you can put by your toilet, squatty potty. Anybody ever heard of that? Because if your legs are higher and you're more in a squatted position, everything opens up and flows through you very easily. Today we sit in a sitting position on the toilet, and now we have more constipation probably ever in history. We're stopping the natural body's ability to eliminate, which is the same also helping with delivering a baby. You want to be able to create pressure by position. But they put the woman on her back, take that all away. And now you have so many C-sections and you got epidurals and all those things. So when you start putting all this together, because again, very intelligent people do the wrong thing, in my opinion, in my experience. Very intelligent people do the wrong thing. So now you take the idea, what's natural? Where did this process or approach come from? Did it have a good reason? And you start to realize that no, it didn't. It was something completely different, and it just became like a passed down habit. It's like teaching a martial art that doesn't work, and you just keep teaching it generation to generation. Well, it's never going to improve if it doesn't work in the first place. You know, that technique. Well, why do you teach this way? What do you mean? You're disrespecting the master. You have to teach it this way. And he learned from his master, and you don't question the master. Well, you don't question the king. You think about that. How many times did we not question and continue to do something that absolutely made no sense and wasn't in our best interest? And there's lots of modern examples I can talk about that I won't. But I will say that I keep being proven right. I always keep an open mind to learn. And if I can be proven wrong, I'm more than happy to take that and learn from it and change. But I keep being proven right. I'm able to better observe truth, I guess, to recognize what's not accurate and question it and find other sources to give me better information. And so I believe that becomes a skill, and it's a very powerful skill that I advise everybody try to develop. One of those skills is in reading, being able to read what, like I was saying, how they're saying things without saying anything, how they're saying things in a very safe way that the attorneys allow because they don't want liability, or they say things that they straight out disagree with actual science, but they manipulate because of who knows whatever agenda they have. And so now moving from intelligence to consciousness. Consciousness is going to include awareness of yourself, your shortcomings, right? Know thyself is higher consciousness. Really knowing yourself. A lot of people think they know themselves, but they don't. Every day I'm feeling pulses, and I can feel extreme anxiety. I can feel anger, irritabilities, right? No, I'm not like that. And it's very funny if they have a spouse or a friend with them and the other person says, yeah, they are. And that's the thing, because we're not aware of ourselves. So intelligence versus consciousness, you have to have self-awareness. You have to know your shortcomings, your strengths, and you have to know, there's this thing of that's just the way I am. Okay, now you know that's the way you are. That's self-awareness. But then there's also intelligent enough to work on it and not be that way. Because if your reaction to things is not serving you or others, why would you say that's just the way I am? I can't help it. I can't help myself. You think you can't help yourself, but I would disagree. If you're aware of it, it's the first step. You can change if you want to. So then there's also, so you have to know yourself. Only then, once you know yourself, can you know others. And as you begin to know others, then you can start to be able to read between the lines and see how people talk, whether it's truly honest or not. I mean, somebody can completely believe what they're saying. It could be all be BS. And that's again what I said in the beginning. It's like a mind control. Is that people fully believe because they've trusted their sources. And if their sources are lying to them, it's easier to fool. There's a quote. It's easier to fool people than to convince them that they've been fooled. Why is there a quote like that? Because it's very common. The truth gets around the world before no. A lie gets around the world before the truth gets its pants on. Like there's sayings like this, because in human history, it's happened many, many, many times. And then the question is, are you even aware of it? So being able to read people, right? Know yourself, know others. Can you read people? Can you feel people? What does that mean? Empathy, compassion, right? You feel for others and you feel what they feel. You can recognize that. Also, when you're more conscious, all life counts to you. It doesn't matter if it's a human or a bird or a dog or a bug. You have an appreciation for all life. It's all part of the divine nature. It's another experience in this existence. And so an intelligent person who doesn't believe in that kind of consciousness, you have to question how intelligent are they really, which is what you said, not book smart. Because some people can, I mean, it amazes me if you walk into an attorney's office, and they have walls of books, and they've read many of them. You work on a case, you got to go piles of books, so they got to go through that. I can't even fathom that, going through things, because when I read, I don't read fast. I want to make sure I digest it. I might go through a paragraph and then kind of meditate for a bit and see how that applies to things. Because getting cover to cover mindlessly, what did you really gain? Why did you bother wasting your time with that? So that's why my first question to your question was, well, what's your definition of intelligence, right? Human intelligence should be the highest. And we should realize what it even says in the Bible, which applies to all humans, regardless of your religion. That's a whole nother topic. But ye are all gods. No different than a drop in the ocean. Contains everything that's in the same, chemically, it's the same water. That one drop, same as the ocean. But the ocean is so vast, and one drop. It's the same. You're part of that. You're part of the consciousness of all of us. When you raise your consciousness, you realize hurting others hurts you. And so anybody out there who is lying and is hurting others, they may be very intelligent, but their consciousness is very low. Another question. Got a couple new people popped in. Yes, sir, Mr. Avalez, you can unmute yourself.
Yes, Shifu, thank you. When you say knowing yourself, are you familiar with like the Myers-Briggs personality test?
A little bit. I've heard of it. I wouldn't know details. Maybe you can explain.
There's like 4 groups, and each group you could pick one or the other. It's like, I think introvert, extrovert, thinking, feeling, sensing, judging, and then 2 others. So you could be one or the other in each of the 4 groups. And then I think it's like 16 or 32 different personality types. But a couple of years ago, I stumbled upon that, and I thought it was really interesting because it, I took the test and it highlighted like my strengths, my weaknesses, and it was like spot on. And then even down to like the professions that you would be good at. And it turned out I went into the profession that I would be good at, but only like 15 years after I graduated college, or not 15 years, like 5 years after I graduated college, and wasted a bunch of time doing nothing, So it's definitely a useful tool for younger individuals to like get ahead and like be more aware of who they are and what their strengths and weaknesses are.
It also works for an employer with hires, when you hire people,
Mm-hmm.
hire the right person for the right
Yeah,
position, right?
better suited for the job. Yeah. And the person will actually enjoy it rather than going in every day like, oh, I hate my job. So, yeah.
Exactly.
But ever since then, I've I've gotten more in tune with who I am, and as far as like being more conscious of nature, I think that as well. I don't know if it's something that just comes with age, but I remember walking to the bus every day, and I was in Bergenfield. I lived right up on North First, so I'd walk down to the bus by TD Bank, and I noticed in like the spring the birds. I started noticing them, and then I started wanting to know what the calls of the birds were, and then I could identify them. And like over the years, it's just grown and grown and grown. So I think there is something to that.
There is something to what now? The ability to understand the calls?
Like self-consciousness, and then like just
yeah.
getting more in tune with everything in nature. And I don't really have a question, but just a comment. Anyone else?
So I'm trying to think why you brought that up. Yeah, I'll get to next question in a minute, but
I was just asking if you were familiar with Myers-Briggs. I didn't really
Right,
have
I
a good
understand.
question, but
So yeah, I want to just give it a minute though. Remember what I said? That's just the way I am, and we don't have to accept that. Okay, so living life in a smart way. Let's talk martial arts. I train my weaknesses. If my left isn't good, I want to work on my left. If my kicking isn't good, I want to work on my kicks. Maybe I'm very fast with my hands, but my kicks don't have accuracy. So I want to work and make accuracy in my kicks. But if I actually was in a fight, I go with my strengths. See the difference? So yeah, if you want to go into a career, you go with your strengths because you're going to have an easier time, more enjoyable time. This is absolutely true. But you can expand yourself and grow in life by working on your weaknesses. So a lot of people, there's some concept now in the psychology that go with your strengths, but it's like there's a reason to go with your strengths. If you only go with your strengths, you never improve yourself. Work on your weaknesses. You can make them very strong. And then you may change completely and even want a different career. Who knows? You could get bored. So there's just going with the flow, which is valid. But there's also going with the grow to actually improve yourself through your life. Mr. Antamate.
Yes, sir. My question is, what is the meaning behind the name? What is the meaning and origin of the school's name, Blue Dragon?
Oh, interesting question. Well, first of all, way in the beginning when I was training with Grandmaster Park, he told me that the name of the system was originally Qinglong, meaning blue or green dragon. And he told me that this was the most powerful dragon, the most energy, the most chi, he would say, and it was like the best. And so that was the name they used. But it's interesting how people change over time, and later on he denied that. But that's because of his religious beliefs. The pastor actually told him that, the negativities from a Christian perspective of a dragon. But this is a Chinese perspective, and the dragon is a positive thing, different perspective. But that was the origin. And myself and my training partner knew this early on. And he named his school Blue Dragon. And then we originally were Bergen Kung Fu Academy. And it was interesting because Grandmaster Park would come and he would like, what's Bergen? Who's Bergen? He would kind of tease me about the name because he believed it should be named after something powerful, I guess, but it was obviously a recognition thing for local, you know. You name something after the town or the county, and it's easier for people to remember. But anyway, through the years, I decided when we started changing the way we were teaching. So a lot of what you experience now was going back to that change. It was around 2003. And we changed the name. No, it had to be before that. Around early 2000. We changed the name to Blue Dragon. Now, what is Blue Dragon? That was the original name that I was told. But then, where does it come from? So in Bagua, there's a posture when you go into Fanjang called Qinglong or Blue Dragon, and some say Green Dragon, but Blue Dragon stretches its claws. And that's when you go into that posture, you know, with the two hands protecting you. So that posture is what it's named for, and that's the dragon in Bagua. That you look at any Bagua, they all have that posture. They may even give it a different name, but that's the one that was passed down in our case. So it's very directly recognizing our history. Does that make sense? Supposed to be the best. But that's up to you on an individual basis, isn't it? Greatest martial art with the worst student, it's going to look terrible. It's going to be terrible. Won't get results. Bad martial art with a great student, probably going to be able to make it work. Great martial art with a great student should be the best. Another question. Mr. McEwen, you had another one earlier? Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, just a follow-up. My question about high intelligence and high consciousness. If there were no such thing as human beings, the planet would be a paradise. Everything would be in perfect harmony. All other living forms of life, correct? So are we trading off our intelligence by with our consciousness, higher level consciousness? Because it seems like as human beings, we destroy everything we touch. How can we be considered the highest forms of intelligence on the planet if we're the ones who are disrupting everything? Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course. This is one of those things that what's true. So you've heard in the past that the average person, let's say 1,000 years ago, lived to like 20, some 25, 30 years old.
Yes.
Do you believe that's true?
I don't think it was that short of a lifespan.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, does it?
No.
Okay, but very intelligent people believe that's true. This is another example. It's absolutely not true. But if a person lives to 60 and a child dies when it's born, you can average those two together. Now you have an average age of 30, don't you?
Yes.
Okay. So humans having the most brain power to also create, we continued to make our lives more comfortable and to find ways to extend life or stop, let's say, I mean, there is no pain worse than a parent losing a child. So our brain would think, well, let's find a way to stop that from happening. Or someone breaks a leg and dies of the infection. That's another example. They could die at 10 years old. The body didn't give out. The body became toxic from the infection. So we got very good at fixing broken legs or bleeding out. I mean, today they're replacing joints, that. So there's a trade-off. I mean, look at this. I'm in Tennessee talking to you guys right now. So human intelligence is absolutely making our lives also reach out to each other like never before. We can reach someone on the other side of the planet in a text momentarily, right? I write the text and they get it instantly. So it's like people complaining about capitalism and they're sitting there on their iPhone. This is total lack of awareness again. This same mind, if we take out corruption, can figure out how to maintain the paradise. Because I asked you, and I've done this. So living in nature, like a native person, like I've made stone tools. I've done these kind of practices to understand survival. I know I could walk up into the mountain and just know nothing. I could walk up naked. I know what to do. I'm just out of practice, but I know what to do to survive. How many people know that? It's my understanding that people who live the natural way had about 2 hours to work, whether it was hunting and gathering and whatever, and the rest was play. And look at the world we created where we're stressing ourselves out, overworked, undersleeping, having light when we're not supposed to. Totally, it throws us off, our hormones and everything else. This nonstop attitude, this never enough, right? The materialism. So as you can see, I can talk on both sides of this. We are very smart, so we made our lives easier, like a lean-to made out of sticks and leaves versus a hut. And then you have a family, and it's like there's not enough room, you make a bigger hut. Well, why don't we make rooms in the hut? And then we have these mansions that eventually we led into, and now we all live in boxes. So there's a problem there with awareness, staying closer to nature versus making life easier, more convenient, more comfortable. And if you're paying attention, there's a lot of people that are sort of trying to bridge the gap. Maybe you've heard of earth homes. There's like a earth ship or something. It's like they build the home into the earth. So there's, again, our intelligence is figuring out that we got too far away from nature and we need to get back, but we don't want to become cavemen again. So it's no different than overcompensation, right? I do believe we are living in the apocalypse.
Me too.
What's the apocalypse? The apocalypse is the awakening. There are more people aware of how the system works than ever before. And that awakening is what's going to make the changes, because the masses are the ones who have been taken advantage of. And that's who really has the power once we realize it. And so then the brilliance of the human mind will be able to bridge the gap and get us back towards nature, but yet still have comfort, still have good medicine, not die of an infection, right? We already have that intelligence, but we're so removed from the natural ways, which is the whole foundation of our martial art, based on natural laws. The goal of Bagua Zhang is to bring you back to the Tao. What is Tao? The same as God. What is God? Nature. What's more perfect than nature? The earth can heal. We just have to realize how to heal it. But don't buy for a second the things you hear again in the mainstream, which is to the benefit of the few. To take from the many for the benefit of the few, under the guise of maybe what you're thinking. We'll say climate change. The climate changes naturally in cycles all the time. But you start talking pollution, you walk out, there's garbage in the ground. Yeah, these are all the things we have to get better at, obviously. But there's so many lies told. And that's another one where you really need to study multiple sides, all these perspectives to have a better understanding. And I'm no expert, but I've come to a conclusion that, yeah, we have to get back to nature because this is closer to Tao, where we'll be healthier and happier. But the ways that are promoted and the reasoning behind it, I mean, just for example, do you know what it takes to build an electric car? And then when the battery dies, where does that go? There are major contradictions going on here, guys. You have to understand, if they're building an industry, does it really serve the purpose that they're telling you, or are you just buying another lie? So yes, we need to make changes. We need to get closer to natural ways. We need to simplify our lives. But just because you see it on the mainstream telling you we need this or we need that, it goes back to how I started. Who's paying for that message to you? We need to recognize that. That's why the first thing we have to do is work on ourselves and raise our own consciousness so that we can make better choices and also influence others around us. And that's what I believe is happening. That's the awakening. Let's go to meditation.
Thank you.